3 days earlier, Simone had been sitting in the back row of her business statistics class, trying to ignore the growling in her stomach. She'd skipped breakfast to save money, and lunch was still 3 hours away. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Got the Blackwood event. Need your help Friday. Please. Simone typed back quickly. I have a paper due Saturday. I know, baby. I'll pay you. $100. Simone closed her eyes. $100 meant groceries for 2 weeks. It meant she could finally replace her laptop's cracked screen. It meant saying yes even though she hated these events, hated the way people looked through her like she wasn't human. Okay, Mom. I'll be there. Diane Johnson had been catering events for 15 years, ever since Simone's father had died in a construction accident. The insurance payout had been enough to keep them housed and fed, but barely. Diane worked 70-hour weeks, taking any job she could find. She'd raised Simone alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in the Riverside district, the kind of neighborhood where sirens were background noise and corner stores had bulletproof glass. But Diane had rules: homework first, always. Education was the only way out. Stay focused, stay clean, stay out of trouble. Simone had followed every rule. She'd graduated high school with a 4.0, won a partial scholarship to community college. But partial wasn't full. She worked 20 hours a week at a grocery store, helped her mother on weekends, and still had to take out loans for the rest. The prestigious universities that had sent her recruitment letters might as well have been on another planet. Their financial aid packages still left gaps she couldn't bridge. So she'd enrolled at Riverside Community College, planning to transfer after 2 years if she could save enough. Her professors told her she had potential. Her advisor suggested applying for additional scholarships. Everyone had advice. Nobody had money. Chess had been her escape since she was 10. A teacher had started an after-school club, and Simone had been hooked immediately. The game made sense in a way nothing else did. 32 pieces, 64 squares, infinite possibilities. On the board, it didn't matter what you looked like or where you came from. Only the moves mattered. When the school club ended due to budget cuts, Simone had taught herself. Library books, free websites, anonymous online games. She'd played thousands of matches against opponents from around the world. Some nights, when her mother worked late and the apartment felt too empty, Simone would play until 2 or 3 in the morning, losing herself in the patterns. She'd never told anyone about her skill. What was the point? Chess wasn't going to pay her tuition or fix her mother's car. It was just something she was good at, a private thing, hers alone. But now, as she sat in Trevor Blackwood's mansion surrounded by people who saw her as entertainment, Simone felt something shift inside her chest. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. She watched Trevor make his opening move, pawn to e4, mirroring hers. A standard response. He was playing casual chess, the kind you played at coffee shops, making moves without deep calculation. He was here to win, but more importantly, he was here to perform for his audience. Simone played pawn to e5. Classical. Safe. Nervous? Trevor asked, his tone friendly but condescending. Don't worry, I'll go easy on you. Someone in the crowd laughed. Simone said nothing. She'd learned a long time ago that silence was often the best response. Trevor developed his knight. Simone responded in kind. The pieces began to populate the board, a familiar dance she'd performed countless times. But unlike her online opponents, Trevor telegraphed his strategy with every move. He was playing textbook chess, following patterns without adaptation. Simone could already see the shape of the middle game forming. She could see the weaknesses in Trevor's position, the slight overextension, the king that would be vulnerable in 12 moves if she played correctly. She could see the path to victory, clear as daylight. But she played carefully, conservatively. She didn't want to win. She just didn't want to lose too badly. Not yet, anyway. The crowd had started to chat among themselves, bored with the slow pace. Trevor made another move, taking one of Simone's pawns. First blood, he announced cheerfully. Simone nodded and continued playing. She was 5 moves from forcing Trevor into a position where his queen would be trapped. But she held back, playing defensively instead. Better to lose quietly than to humiliate someone who held her mother's livelihood in his hands. Then she saw her mother's face in the crowd. Diane was watching with barely concealed worry, wringing her hands. She'd worked so hard for this contract, had stayed up late perfecting recipes, had borrowed money to buy supplies. And here was her daughter, being used as a prop in some rich man's show. Simone looked back at the board. At the pieces that didn't care about money or status. At the game that had given her countless hours of joy. Something hardened in her chest. Why should she lose on purpose? Why should she make herself smaller to make Trevor Blackwood feel bigger? She moved her bishop, a subtle repositioning that changed everything. Trevor didn't notice. He was too busy chatting with someone about his new yacht. But the game had shifted. And Simone had decided to play for real. The next 15 minutes passed in a blur of moves and countermoves. Trevor played with confidence, capturing 2 more of Simone's pieces while losing only 1 of his own. The crowd had thinned slightly, some guests drifting toward the bar or the hors d'oeuvres table, but about 20 people remained watching. "You're not bad," Trevor said, studying the board with slightly more focus than before. "Better than I expected." Simone bit back her response. She'd been playing defensive chess, letting Trevor feel dominant while slowly, carefully, repositioning her pieces. Her knight was now perfectly placed to fork Trevor's rook and bishop in 3 moves. Her queen had a diagonal line that Trevor hadn't noticed yet. Her rooks were doubled on the c-file, ready to invade. "Thank you," she said simply. Trevor moved his queen aggressively forward, threatening Simone's knight. It looked like a powerful move, the kind that would impress casual observers. But Simone saw the truth. He'd just weakened his king's protection and given her an opening. She moved her knight, seemingly retreating from his queen's threat. The crowd murmured, interpreting it as defensive. Trevor smiled. "Running away won't help you." He captured 1 of her pawns with his queen, moving even deeper into Simone's territory. A man in the crowd laughed. "Finish her off, Trevor." Simone met her mother's eyes again. Diane had moved closer to the table, watching intently. Something in her mother's face had changed. The worry was still there, but underneath it was something else. Hope. Pride. Simone moved her bishop, a quiet move that looked insignificant. Trevor barely glanced at it before moving his rook, clearly planning a checkmate sequence in his head. That was his first real mistake. Simone moved her other knight. "Check," she said softly. Trevor's head snapped up. His king was indeed in check from the knight. He frowned, studying the board more carefully now. He moved his king to safety. Simone brought her queen into play, sliding it across the diagonal she'd been preparing for the past 10 moves. Suddenly, 3 of Trevor's pieces were under attack simultaneously. The room went quiet. Trevor stared at the board, his smile fading. He was trying to calculate, to figure out how he'd missed this. He moved his bishop to block, losing the piece but protecting his rook. Simone took the bishop with her queen. The position was now equal in material, but Simone's pieces were coordinated while Trevor's were scattered and defensive. "Interesting," Trevor muttered. His casual demeanor had vanished. He was leaning forward now, elbows on knees, really looking at the board. The crowd had stopped chatting. Someone whispered, "Is she actually good?" Simone played steadily, methodically. She'd stopped trying to hide her skill. Every move was precise, purposeful. She was playing the kind of chess she played online, against serious opponents, where every tempo mattered. Trevor was good enough to recognize what was happening. His moves became slower, more careful. He was fighting for every square now, trying to create complications. But Simone had already calculated 6 moves ahead. She'd seen this pattern before in hundreds of games. She knew how it ended. She advanced her pawn, a quiet move that threatened to promote to a queen if Trevor didn't address it. But addressing it would mean weakening his king further. Trevor chose to ignore the pawn, going for a counterattack instead. He moved his rook to the 7th rank, threatening Simone's pawns. It was exactly what she'd expected. Simone moved her knight again. Check. Trevor's king had to move. When it did, Simone's queen and knight would work together to create a mating net. Trevor saw it too. His face flushed. He'd been outplayed, and everyone in the room could see it. "You've been sandbagging," he said, looking up at her with a mixture of anger and respect. "No, sir," Simone replied. "You asked me to play. I'm playing." A woman in the crowd actually gasped at the quiet audacity of Simone's response. Trevor moved his king. It was the only legal move, but it walked directly into Simone's trap. She brought her queen in. The mating net tightened. Trevor tried to break free, sacrificing his rook to create an escape square. Simone took the rook and repositioned. Check. The king moved again. Check. And again. "Checkmate," Simone said quietly. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Trevor Blackwood stared at the board, his mouth slightly open. He'd just been beaten, soundly and completely, by a catering assistant he'd invited to play as a joke. Simone stood up carefully, her legs shaking slightly. "Thank you for the game, Mr. Blackwood. I should get back to work." She turned toward her mother, who had tears in her eyes. "Wait," Trevor said. His voice was different now. Serious. "Please wait. What would you do if you'd just publicly beaten a billionaire? Comment below whether Simone should stay or walk away, and subscribe to see what happens next." Simone stopped but didn't turn around immediately. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Behind her, the crowd's whispers grew louder. She'd just humiliated one of the wealthiest men in the state in his own home, in front of his guests. "Please," Trevor said again. "Sit down. Just for a moment." Simone looked at her mother. Diane's face was unreadable, but she gave a small nod. Simone sat back down. Trevor was still staring at the board, replaying the moves in his head. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked. His voice had lost all its earlier condescension. "Books," Simone said. "The library. Online." "You play online? What platform?" "Several. Mostly Chess Arena." "What's your rating?" Simone hesitated. Her rating was something she'd never shared with anyone in her real life. It felt private, separate from the world where she was just a community college student working dead-end jobs. "Around 2200, she said finally. Trevor's eyebrows shot up. "That's master level." "Not officially. I've never played in sanctioned tournaments. Can't afford the entry fees." The room was still quiet. Everyone was listening now, the earlier dismissiveness replaced by curiosity. Trevor leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "I need to apologize," he said. "I invited you to play as entertainment. I assumed you'd be easy to beat. That was arrogant and disrespectful." Simone blinked, surprised by the directness of his apology. "Okay," she said. "It's not okay," Trevor continued. "I do this sometimes. I make assumptions about people based on surface judgments. My ex-wife used to tell me it was my worst quality." He smiled ruefully. She was right. One of the guests, a woman in a red dress, stepped forward. "Trevor, darling, we should let this young woman get back to work." But Trevor held up a hand. "No. I want to know more." He looked at Simone directly. "You said you go to community college?" "Yes. Riverside Community College. Second year." "Studying what?" "Business administration. I want to switch to computer science, but the program's full." "Why computer science?" Simone considered her answer. The honest one was complicated, but something about this moment made her want to be truthful. "Because systems make sense to me. Patterns, logic, problem solving. Same as chess. And because tech jobs pay well. My mom works too hard. I want to change that." Diane made a small sound from across the room. Simone glanced at her mother, whose eyes were definitely wet now. Trevor nodded slowly. "Your mother is Diane Johnson? The caterer?" "Yes. The woman who's worked for 3 hours in a hot kitchen to make sure my guests have perfect food?" "Yes." Trevor stood up and walked over to Diane. The crowd parted. "Ms. Johnson, your daughter just taught me a valuable lesson about assumptions and humility. Thank you for raising someone so composed under pressure." Diane looked startled. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood." Trevor turned back to the room. "Everyone, I want you to meet Simone Johnson." Simone is a chess master, a dedicated student, and clearly someone with considerable talent that's been overlooked because people like us don't bother to look. He paused, letting that sink in. Tonight was supposed to be about charity. About helping people with potential. And here I was, ready to mock someone with more potential than half the people in this room. Several guests had the grace to look uncomfortable. Trevor walked back to Simone. I'd like to offer you something. Not charity, but an opportunity. Simone's mouth went dry. What kind of opportunity? I don't know yet. But I'd like to find out what you're capable of, given the right resources. Would you be willing to meet with me next week? No obligations, no strings. Just a conversation about what you want and what might be possible. Every instinct told Simone to be cautious. Rich people didn't just hand out opportunities to broke college students without wanting something in return. But she thought about her cracked laptop screen, about her mother's tired eyes, about the community college classes that didn't challenge her, about the future she wanted but couldn't afford. Yes, she said. I'll meet with you. Trevor smiled, genuine this time. Good. Give your contact information to my assistant before you leave. He glanced at the chessboard. And Simone. Thank you for the game. It's been years since someone beat me that thoroughly. You're welcome, Simone said. Then, because the moment seemed to call for honesty, she added, you weren't bad. You just played too casually. You have the knowledge. You just need to take your opponents seriously. Trevor laughed, a real laugh without any bitterness. Noted. I'll remember that. As Simone stood to return to work, she caught her mother's eye. Diane was smiling now, crying and smiling at the same time. Simone wanted to run to her, to share this impossible moment, but there were still guests to serve, glasses to refill, plates to clear. She picked up her tray and went back to work. But everything had changed. She could feel it in the way people looked at her now, the way they stepped aside to let her pass, the way conversations paused when she approached. She'd been invisible an hour ago. Now she was seen. And she wasn't sure yet whether that was good or dangerous. The rest of the evening passed in a surreal haze. Simone served drinks and collected plates, but now guests actually thanked her. Some even asked her questions about chess, about school, about her plans. She answered politely, still processing what had happened. Trevor didn't speak to her again that night, busy with his hosting duties. But she felt his eyes on her occasionally, thoughtful and assessing. Around 11, as the party wound down, a young woman in a grey suit approached Simone. Hi, I'm Rebecca Chen, Mr. Blackwood's executive assistant. He asked me to get your contact information. Simone recited her phone number and email address, watching Rebecca type them into an expensive-looking phone. We'll reach out early next week to schedule a meeting, Rebecca said. Probably at his downtown office. Does afternoon work for you? I have classes until 2 on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Tuesday afternoon then. Say, 3 o'clock. Yes. That works. Rebecca smiled. It seemed genuine. That was impressive, by the way. The chess game. I've known Trevor for 5 years, and I've never seen anyone shut him up like that. Simone managed a small smile. I didn't mean to embarrass him. He needed it. Between you and me, success has made him a bit insufferable sometimes. He's not a bad person, just very used to being the smartest person in the room. Rebecca's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. I need to go, but I'll send you an email tomorrow with the details. It was nice to meet you, Simone. After Rebecca left, Simone helped her mother and the other servers clean up. They worked in silence, efficiently breaking down the serving stations and packing up equipment. The other servers kept glancing at Simone, clearly curious but uncertain how to ask questions. Finally, around midnight, they loaded the last box into Diane's catering van. The other servers left in their own cars, and Simone climbed into the passenger seat of the van. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Diane started to laugh. Not a small laugh, but a full, gasping laugh that shook her whole body. Mom! Simone said, worried. You beat him, Diane gasped between laughs. You beat that smug rich man at his own game, in his own house, in front of all his smug rich friends. Simone started laughing too. The tension of the evening poured out of her in waves. They sat in the dark parking lot, laughing until tears ran down their faces. "Did you see his face?" Diane wheezed. "When you said checkmate." "He looked like someone had slapped him with a fish," Simone said, which set them both off again. When they finally calmed down, Diane reached over and took Simone's hand. "Baby, I'm so proud of you. Not just for winning, but for how you handled yourself. You were respectful, composed, confident. You were amazing." "I was terrified," Simone admitted. "I thought I was going to cost you the contract." "Who cares about the contract? You stood up for yourself without being cruel. You showed them who you are." Diane squeezed her hand. "Your father would have been so proud." Simone felt tears prick her eyes again, but different tears this time. Her father had died when she was 7, but she still remembered his voice, his laugh, the way he'd called her his smart girl and brought home library books he thought she'd like. "Do you think this meeting is real?" Simone asked. "Or is it just guilt?" "I don't know," Diane said honestly. "But you should go. See what he has to say. Just be careful, okay? People like Trevor Blackwood don't usually do things without expecting something in return." "I know." They drove home through empty streets. Their apartment looked smaller than usual when they arrived, the peeling paint and cracked linoleum more obvious after an evening in Trevor's mansion. But it was home, and it was theirs, and Simone felt a fierce love for it despite its flaws. That night, lying in bed, Simone opened her laptop and logged into Chess Arena. Her inbox had several game requests waiting. She accepted one at random and began to play. Her opponent was good, rated 2150. They played fast, blitz chess, 3 minutes per side. Simone lost track of time as she calculated variations, looked for tactics, defended against attacks. The position was complex, balanced on a knife's edge. At move 32, she saw it. A queen sacrifice that would lead to checkmate in 7 moves if her opponent didn't see the defense. She made the sacrifice. Her opponent thought for a long time, the clock ticking down. Then they resigned. "Good game," they messaged. "That sacrifice was beautiful." "Thanks," Simone typed back. "You played well too." She logged off and closed her laptop. Tomorrow she had class, had work at the grocery store, had papers to write and problems to solve. But tonight, for these few hours, she let herself imagine a different future. One where her talent mattered, where doors opened instead of staying closed, where she and her mother didn't have to struggle so hard just to survive. Tuesday was 5 days away. 5 days to prepare for a meeting that might change everything or might be nothing at all. Simone closed her eyes and started planning what she would say. Tuesday arrived faster than Simone expected. She changed outfits 3 times before settling on dark jeans, a simple white blouse, and the one nice blazer she owned. Professional but not trying too hard. Confident but not presumptuous. Trevor's office was in the newest tower downtown, all glass and steel, the kind of building that screamed money. Simone gave her name to the receptionist and was directed to the 40th floor. Rebecca met her at the elevator. Perfect timing. "Trevor's just finishing a call. Can I get you anything? Water, coffee?" "Water would be good. Thank you." Rebecca led her to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Simone could see her neighborhood from here, a cluster of older buildings near the river. From 40 floors up, it looked almost picturesque. Trevor arrived a few minutes later, dressed more casually than at the gala, in slacks and a button-down shirt without a tie. "Simone, thanks for coming. How was the drive?" "Bus, actually. It was fine." Trevor looked momentarily embarrassed. "Right. Of course. Please, sit." They sat across from each other at the conference table. Rebecca brought water and left, closing the door behind her. "I've been thinking about our conversation," Trevor began. "Actually, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. You have a gift, Simone. Multiple gifts, from what I can tell. Chess is just one of them." "Thank you. But gifts without opportunity and resources are just potential energy. They don't do anything, don't go anywhere." He leaned forward. "I want to change that." I want to give you the opportunity to see how far you can go. Simone's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. What does that mean specifically? Full scholarship to any university that accepts you. I'll cover tuition, room and board, books, everything. Plus a stipend for living expenses. If you need a better computer, a phone, whatever tools you need to succeed, those are covered too. Simone stared at him. Why? Because I can. Because you earned it. Because I believe in investing in exceptional people. Trevor paused. And because I was a jerk to you, and this is how I make that right. That's a lot of money for making amends. Trevor smiled. I have a lot of money. But this isn't charity. I have conditions. There it was. The catch. Simone straightened. What conditions? You maintain at least a 3.5 GPA. You check in monthly with a mentor I'll assign, someone who can guide you as you navigate university. And you participate in my company's student outreach program, helping teach chess and coding to kids from backgrounds like yours. Simone processed this. That's it. That's it. No ownership over your future, no obligation to work for my company, no strings beyond those 3 requirements. You succeed, you give back a little, you stay in touch. Simple. It wasn't simple at all. It was life-changing. It was everything Simone had dreamed of but never believed possible. And it terrified her. I need to think about it, she heard herself say. Trevor nodded approvingly. Good. That's smart. Don't accept life-changing offers without thinking them through. Talk to your mother. Talk to people you trust. Ask me any questions you need answered. He slid a folder across the table. Here's everything in writing. The scholarship terms, the expectations, the support you'd receive. Take it, read it carefully. When you're ready, let Rebecca know. Simone took the folder. It was heavy, substantial. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why me? You must meet talented people all the time. Probably people with better credentials, better connections. Trevor was quiet for a moment. You know what I saw when you played chess with me? Someone who was 3 moves ahead the entire game. Someone who could have crushed me in 15 moves but chose not to, out of kindness or strategy or both. Someone who, when finally pushed, showed exactly how skilled they were without gloating or revenge. He met her eyes. You think strategically. You're humble but not weak. You learn on your own because you have to. Those are the qualities that build something lasting. That's why you. Simone felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd kept carefully locked away. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying hope. I'll read everything, she said. And I'll give you an answer by Friday. Perfect. They stood. Trevor extended his hand, and Simone shook it. His grip was firm, respectful. As she rode the elevator down, clutching the folder, Simone caught her reflection in the polished metal doors. She looked the same as always. But something was different. She could feel it. She texted her mother, "Can you come home early tonight? We need to talk." Diane's response came immediately, "Good talk or bad talk?" "Good. Really, really good. Has anyone ever offered you something that seemed too good to be true? Drop a comment with whether you'd accept Trevor's offer or not, and hit subscribe to see what Simone decides." Simone accepted the offer on Thursday, 2 days ahead of her self-imposed deadline. She'd read every word of the contract twice, had her mother read it, had even taken it to a free legal clinic at school to make sure there weren't any hidden traps. Everyone agreed, it was legitimate, generous, and exactly what it appeared to be. Trevor's response email was brief, "Congratulations. Let's get started." Things moved quickly after that. Trevor connected her with an educational consultant who helped her apply to transfer programs at several universities. Simone's grades and test scores had always been strong, but her application essays, now free from the stress of wondering how she'd pay for school, practically wrote themselves. She wrote about chess, about patterns and strategy, about how poverty taught you to think 5 moves ahead because you couldn't afford mistakes. She wrote about her mother's resilience, about her father's memory, about the library books that had opened worlds she couldn't physically reach. She wrote honestly, without trying to make her struggles sound romantic or her dreams sound modest. 6 weeks later, she had acceptance letters from 3 universities: Berkeley, UCLA, and her dream school, Stanford. Stanford, her mother breathed, holding the acceptance letter like it was made of glass. "Baby, you got into Stanford." They celebrated that night with takeout pizza and sparkling cider, sitting in their small living room, hardly believing it was real. But it was real. The scholarship was real. The opportunity was real. Trevor had also offered Diane a position. Not out of pity, he'd insisted, but because his company was expanding its corporate events division and needed an experienced manager. The salary was triple what Diane made with her catering business. The benefits included health insurance, a retirement plan, paid vacation. Diane had cried when she accepted. Real tears, the kind that came from years of holding everything together finally being able to relax, just a little. "This is too much," Diane said to Trevor during a dinner meeting to discuss the logistics. Simone had been invited too. "You're changing our entire lives." "You changed your own lives," Trevor replied. "You raised an exceptional daughter while building a business." Simone taught herself to be a chess master with library books. "I'm just removing obstacles you shouldn't have had in the first place." "Still," Diane said. "Thank you. For seeing her. For seeing us." In August, Simone moved into her dorm at Stanford. The room was small but felt massive compared to what she'd had before. She had her own desk, her own closet, her own space to think and study and grow. Her roommate was a friendly young woman named Jessica from Oregon, whose parents were both doctors. Jessica was nervous about being away from home for the first time. Simone helped her unpack and offered to show her around campus, even though Simone had never been there before either. They figured it out together. Classes started, and Simone threw herself into her studies. Computer science was everything she'd hoped for. The logic, the problem-solving, the way code was like chess, building structures move by move until you created something functional and elegant. She loved it. She also joined the chess club, where she quickly became one of the top players. She competed in her first sanctioned tournament in September and won convincingly. Her official rating jumped to 2,250 after 3 more tournaments. But the most meaningful part was the outreach program Trevor had required. Every Saturday, Simone took the train back to Riverside and taught chess to kids at the community center. She showed them the games that had inspired her, taught them to see patterns, to think ahead, to believe that they were smart enough to master something difficult. One of her students, a quiet 9-year-old named Justin, reminded her of herself. He came every week, always early, and studied the board with intense concentration. His clothes were worn, his sneakers had holes, but his eyes were sharp and curious. "Why do you like chess?" Simone asked him one day. Justin thought about it carefully. "Because when I play, nothing else matters. Just the pieces and what they can do." Simone understood completely. She gave him one of her old chess books, the first one she'd ever gotten from the library. "This helped me a lot. Keep it as long as you need." Justin's face lit up like she'd given him gold. Trevor visited the program once a month, not to supervise but to play with the kids. He was patient with them, encouraging, genuinely interested in their progress. Simone watched him teach a girl named Keisha how to castle and saw something she hadn't expected. He was good at this. Good at connecting with people when he forgot to be impressive and just tried to be helpful. "You've changed," Simone told him one day after the session ended. "How so?" "You listen more. You assume less." Trevor smiled ruefully. "Getting beaten by a 22-year-old in front of all my friends will do that to a person." He paused. "But seriously, you're right. That night was a wake-up call. I've been trying to be more aware of my blind spots. My team says I'm easier to work with now." "Good. How's Stanford treating you?" "It's hard," Simone admitted. "Everyone's so smart. Everyone's accomplished so much already. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong." "Imposter syndrome," Trevor said. "Even I get it sometimes. But here's what I've learned, everyone feels that way. The people who look most confident are usually the most insecure. You belong there because you earned your place there. Don't forget that." Simone nodded. She was learning that success didn't erase doubt, it just gave you better tools to handle it. Her mother was thriving too. Diane had taken to her new job immediately, bringing the same creativity and work ethic she'd shown in catering to corporate event planning. She'd organized 3 major company conferences in her first 6 months, each one exceeding expectations. She'd even hired 2 assistants and was training them, passing along everything she'd learned. "I feel like I can breathe," Diane told Simone during one of their weekly video calls. "For the first time in 15 years, I'm not worried about the electric bill or the rent. I have savings, baby. Actual savings." They'd moved to a new apartment too, a 2-bedroom in a better neighborhood with a dishwasher and laundry in the building. Small luxuries that felt enormous. "I'm thinking about taking a vacation," Diane said. "Maybe we could go somewhere over your winter break." "Like where?" "I don't know. Somewhere warm. Somewhere we've never been. Somewhere just for fun." They chose Hawaii. Neither of them had ever been on a plane before, had never seen the ocean up close. They spent a week in Maui, swimming and hiking and eating food they couldn't pronounce. Diane laughed more than Simone had seen in years. They took 1,000 pictures, most of them blurry or poorly framed, but perfect anyway. On their last night, sitting on the beach watching the sunset, Diane said, "Your father would be so happy right now. Seeing you at Stanford, seeing us doing well. This is everything he wanted for us." Simone leaned against her mother's shoulder. "We did it together, Mom. You never gave up. Neither did you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the waves roll in, watching the sky turn pink and orange and purple. Simone thought about the chess game that had changed everything, about the strange path that had led from that humiliation to this moment. Life was like chess sometimes. You couldn't see the whole game from the beginning. You just had to make the best move you could with the information you had, and trust that the pattern would reveal itself. Simone's second year at Stanford was even better than the first. She'd declared a double major in computer science and mathematics, was maintaining a 3.9 GPA, and had been invited to join a research project on artificial intelligence and game theory. The professor leading the project, Dr. Rachel Kim, had seen Simone's chess ratings and was interested in how she thought about strategic decision-making. "Games are just simplified models of complex systems," Dr. Kim explained. "If we can understand how humans make optimal choices in games, we can apply that to everything from traffic flow to medical diagnosis." Simone dove into the research with the same intensity she brought to everything. She spent hours running simulations, analyzing patterns, writing code that could predict outcomes based on limited information. It was chess on a different level, and she loved every minute of it. But the breakthrough came from an unexpected place. She was teaching her Saturday chess class, working with a new student who struggled with planning ahead. "You're only thinking about the next move," Simone explained. "You need to think about the next 3, 5, 10 moves." "How?" the student asked, frustrated. "There are too many possibilities. You look for patterns. You eliminate bad options first. You focus on what matters most." As Simone spoke, something clicked in her mind. She was describing exactly the problem they were facing in the AI research. That night, she stayed up until 4 in the morning coding a new algorithm. Instead of trying to analyze every possible outcome, which required too much computing power, her program identified patterns and eliminated unlikely branches of the decision tree. It was faster, more efficient, and surprisingly accurate. She showed it to Dr. Kim on Monday. "This is good," Dr. Kim said, studying the code. "Really good. How did you think of this approach?" "Chess," Simone said. "When you play, you can't calculate every variation. You learn to recognize patterns and focus on the critical variations. I applied the same logic. This could be publishable. Would you want to co-author a paper on it?" Simone's heart skipped. Seriously? Seriously. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need in this field. They spent the next 3 months refining the algorithm, testing it against existing models, writing and rewriting the paper. When they finally submitted it to a conference, Simone felt a mixture of pride and terror. What if it got rejected? What if other researchers thought it was obvious or flawed? The acceptance email came 6 weeks later. Not only accepted, but selected for a presentation slot at the conference. Simone called Trevor with the news. He'd become something between a mentor and a friend over the past 2 years, someone she could share victories and frustrations with. "That's outstanding," Trevor said. "Where's the conference?" "Boston. In March. I'll be there." "You don't have to do that." "I know. But I want to see you present." "You're doing something important, Simone. You should have people there who recognize that." Her mother came too, taking time off work to fly across the country. Diane sat in the front row of the conference hall, wearing a new dress she'd bought specially for the occasion, beaming with pride. Simone's presentation was scheduled for the second day. She was nervous, more nervous than she'd been for any chess tournament. But when she stood at the podium and looked out at the audience of professors, researchers, and industry professionals, she thought about the girl who'd played chess at a billionaire's mansion, who'd been mocked and then proven herself. She could do this. The presentation went well. She explained her algorithm clearly, answered questions confidently, and made it through without any major mistakes. When it ended, several people approached her with questions and comments. One was a recruiter from a major tech company, asking if she'd be interested in a summer internship. "Yes," Simone said without hesitation. "Absolutely." That summer, she interned at the company's headquarters in Silicon Valley. She worked on real products used by millions of people, collaborated with engineers who'd been in the field for decades, and learned more in 3 months than she had in 2 years of classes. At the end of the internship, they offered her a return offer for after graduation. A full-time position with a salary that made Simone's head spin. More money than her mother had made in any 5 years combined. "Take it," Diane said when Simone called to tell her. "You earned it." But Simone was also thinking about something else. The chess program in Riverside had grown. They now had 60 regular students, and a waiting list. Justin, the quiet 9-year-old, had won his first tournament. 3 other students had started competing too. "What if I started something bigger?" Simone said to Trevor during one of their monthly check-ins. "A non-profit. Teaching chess and coding to kids who wouldn't otherwise have access. Using games as a way to teach strategy, logical thinking, problem-solving." Trevor leaned back in his chair. They were having coffee at a shop near campus. "Tell me more. Chess taught me how to think. How to plan, how to see patterns, how to believe I could solve complex problems. But chess alone isn't enough anymore. These kids need technical skills too. Coding, data literacy, design thinking. What if we combined them? What would you need to make it work? Space. Computers. Curriculum. Teachers. Funding." Simone paused. "And time. I'd need to work on it more than just Saturdays." "What if," Trevor said slowly, "you structured it as a social enterprise? A company with a mission. You could get investors, hire staff, scale it properly. You could still take the tech job, build your career, but also build this on the side. I don't know anything about running a company. You'll learn. Same as you learned chess and coding and research. And I can help. Connect you with people, give advice, maybe even invest some seed funding." Simone felt that familiar feeling again. Hope. Possibility. The sense that the game was evolving into something bigger than she'd imagined. "Let me think about it," she said. "Take your time." "But Simone." Trevor smiled. "You have good instincts. Trust them." By the start of her senior year, Simone had a plan. She'd taken business classes, learned about non-profits and social enterprises, studied other organizations doing similar work. She'd written a detailed proposal for what she was calling Checkmate Academy, a program that would teach chess and coding together, using game theory as a bridge between them. Trevor had introduced her to several potential investors and advisors. One of them, a woman named Patricia Robinson who'd built her own educational nonprofit, agreed to mentor Simone through the process. "The hardest part isn't the idea," Patricia explained during their first meeting. "It's the execution. You need a clear mission, sustainable funding, and realistic goals. Dream big, but start small." They started with a pilot program. Simone recruited 3 other Stanford students who were strong in either chess or coding, secured a space at the Riverside Community Center, and opened enrollment for 20 students. The curriculum was simple, 2 hours every Saturday, rotating between chess instruction and basic programming. The response was overwhelming. They had 50 applications for 20 spots. "We need more teachers," Simone told her team. "More space. More computers. We need more money," one of the other students pointed out. Simone created a crowdfunding campaign. She made a video explaining the program, showing clips of students learning, sharing her own story. She posted it on social media and emailed it to everyone she knew. Within 2 weeks, they'd raised $15,000. Enough to buy 20 refurbished laptops and hire 2 part-time instructors. They expanded to 40 students. Then 60. By the end of the academic year, Checkmate Academy was running 3 sessions every weekend, serving 90 kids. Justin, now 11, was one of her teaching assistants. He helped younger students learn basic chess openings and showed endless patience when they struggled. "You taught me," he said when Simone thanked him. "Now I get to teach someone else." Simone graduated from Stanford in June with honors, a job offer from the tech company, and a growing nonprofit that was starting to gain attention. A local news station did a story about Checkmate Academy. Then a tech blog wrote about it. Then a larger newspaper picked it up. The attention brought more donations, more volunteers, more students. Simone hired a part-time executive director to handle the day-to-day operations while she started her full-time job. It was exhausting, working 40 hours a week and then spending evenings and weekends on the nonprofit, but it felt right. Like all the pieces were finally in the right position. Her mother hosted a graduation party at their apartment, inviting everyone who'd been part of their journey. Trevor came, as did Dr. Kim, Patricia, Rebecca, and half the students from Checkmate Academy. The apartment was crowded and loud and perfect. "Speech," someone called out. Simone stood on a chair so everyone could see her. "I'm not good at speeches," she began. "But I want to say thank you. To my mom, who showed me what resilience looks like. To Trevor, who saw potential when he could have just seen a punchline. To everyone who believed in me and in what we're building together." She paused, looking around at all these faces. 3 years ago, I played a chess game that changed my life. But the real change wasn't the scholarship or the opportunities. It was realizing that I didn't have to hide my abilities or make myself smaller. That I could be fully myself and still be accepted. That's what I want for every kid in our program. Not just chess skills or coding skills, but the confidence to know they're capable of anything. People clapped. Diane was crying again, happy tears this time. Trevor raised his glass in a silent toast. Later, as people were leaving, Trevor pulled Simone aside. "I have something for you. A graduation present." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000, made out to Checkmate Academy. "Trevor, this is too much," Simone started to say. "It's not a gift," Trevor interrupted. "It's an investment. I'm officially your first major donor. Use it to expand, to hire more staff, to serve more students. Build something lasting." Simone looked at the check, then at Trevor. "You know I'm going to say yes, right? I can't turn down that kind of funding." Trevor grinned. "I was counting on it. You've learned well. I had a good teacher. We taught each other," Trevor said. "That's what the best relationships do." 2 years after graduation, Checkmate Academy had expanded to 3 locations across the state. They were serving 400 students, had a full-time staff of 8, and had just received a major grant from a national foundation. Simone had been profiled in several magazines, invited to speak at conferences, and approached by school districts interested in partnering. She'd also continued competing in chess. Her rating had climbed to 2,400, earning her the title of FIDE Master. She wasn't the strongest player in the world, but she was strong enough to teach at the highest levels and to represent something important, that excellence could come from anywhere. Her tech career had flourished too. She'd been promoted twice, was leading a team of engineers, and was working on projects that excited her. The salary let her help her mother retire early, something Diane had never imagined possible. "I'm too young to retire," Diane protested when Simone first suggested it. Then call it semi-retirement. Work because you want to, not because you have to. Travel. Take classes. Learn something new. Diane eventually agreed. She started taking art classes, something she'd always wanted to try but never had time for. She was terrible at it, but she loved every minute. On a Saturday in October, Checkmate Academy held its annual showcase event. Students demonstrated what they'd learned, played exhibition games, showed off coding projects they'd built. Parents filled the community center, proud and amazed at what their kids could do. Simone watched from the back of the room, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what she'd dreamed of. Not just her own success, but creating pathways for others. Trevor was there too, as he was for most major events. He'd become more than a donor or mentor. He was a friend, someone who'd genuinely changed through their relationship, who'd learned to see people rather than statistics. "Remember when you invited me to play chess as a joke?" Simone said to him during a quiet moment. Trevor winced. "I try not to. Still one of my most embarrassing moments." "It shouldn't be. It changed both of us for the better." "True. But I still cringe when I think about my arrogance that night." "Use it. Remember how it feels to be wrong. Stay humble." "Yes, Trevor said with a smile. The event ended with a special ceremony. Checkmate Academy was presenting its first college scholarships to 3 graduating seniors from the program. All 3 had been accepted to 4-year universities. All 3 were studying STEM fields. All 3 had started as beginners who'd never played chess or written code before joining the program. As Simone handed them their scholarship certificates, she thought about the path that had led here. About the chess game in a mansion. About the terror and hope of accepting help. About learning that asking for what you need isn't weakness but wisdom. About the way one opportunity could ripple outward, creating opportunities for others. After the ceremony, one of the scholarship recipients approached her. "Thank you," the young woman said. "For starting this program. For showing us what's possible." "You did the work," Simone replied. "I just opened the door. You did more than that. You believed in us before we believed in ourselves." Simone felt tears prick her eyes. "Someone did that for me once. Now we pass it forward." That evening, Simone went back to her apartment and set up her chessboard. She played through one of her favorite games from a tournament last year, analyzing the critical moments, seeing where she could have played better. Chess had given her so much. A way to think, a way to compete, a way to connect with others. But more than that, it had taught her that every position, no matter how difficult, had possibilities. You just had to see them. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Proud of you today. Always proud of you." Simone smiled and texted back, "Love you, Mom. See you tomorrow." She made a cup of tea and sat by her window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, kids were probably playing chess right now. On apps, on physical boards, in parks and schools and community centers. Some of them would be like she'd been, falling in love with the patterns, finding refuge in the logic. And maybe, just maybe, some of them would use that game as a doorway to something bigger. To education, to careers, to their own dreams. The chess game that changed everything hadn't really been about chess at all. It had been about dignity, about potential, about the courage to be seen. About accepting help when it was offered and using it to lift others up too. Simone took another sip of tea and opened her laptop. She had work to do. Grants to write, programs to plan, students to support. The game was far from over. But she was winning. And this time, everyone was winning with her. The crystal chandelier cast sharp shadows across the marble floor as Simone Johnson carried another tray of champagne glasses through the crowded ballroom. Her feet ached in the borrowed black flats, 2 sizes too small, but she kept her face neutral. This was her mother's biggest catering contract of the year, and Simone had promised to help without complaint. "Diane, darling, the shrimp puffs are divine," a woman in a silver gown called out to Simone's mother across the room. Diane smiled and nodded, wiping sweat from her brow as she directed 2 other servers toward the kitchen. Simone maneuvered through clusters of wealthy guests, each wearing watches that cost more than her entire semester's tuition at Riverside Community College. She'd learned to make herself invisible at these events. Rich people rarely looked at the help, which suited her fine. "Trevor, you simply must tell everyone about your chess program," a man's voice boomed near the center of the room. Simone glanced over to see Trevor Blackwood, the host of tonight's charity gala, holding court among a circle of admirers. At 42, he'd made billions in tech acquisitions and wasn't shy about displaying his wealth. "It's nothing really," Trevor said with practiced modesty. "Just funding a few chess programs in schools. Teaching strategy, critical thinking. These kids need structure." "How generous," someone cooed. Trevor's eyes swept the room and landed on Simone as she passed. "You there," he called out. She froze, hoping he meant someone else. "Yes, you with the tray." Simone turned slowly. Every face in the circle was now looking at her. "Do you play chess?" Trevor asked, a slight smirk playing at his lips. Several guests chuckled. Yes, sir," Simone replied quietly. "Wonderful." Trevor's smile widened. "Then you won't mind giving us a demonstration?" "I've been told I'm quite good. It'll be educational." More laughter rippled through the group. Simone felt heat rise to her cheeks. This was mockery, pure and simple. She glanced toward her mother, who stood frozen by the kitchen door, worry etched on her face. "Sir, I'm working right now," Simone said. "Nonsense. I'm sure you're." Trevor paused, looking at Diane. "Your supervisor won't mind. Will you?" Diane's jaw tightened, but she shook her head. "Of course not, Mr. Blackwood." Trevor gestured to a ornate chess set displayed on a side table. "Shall we? Unless you'd prefer not to." The challenge hung in the air. Refusing would humiliate her mother, might cost Diane this job and future contracts. Simone set down her tray carefully. "I'll play," she said. The crowd began to gather around as Trevor settled into one of the upholstered chairs. Someone brought a second chair for Simone. She sat down, aware of dozens of eyes on her uniform, her natural hair pulled into a simple bun, her bare face free of the expensive makeup worn by every other woman in the room. Trevor set up the pieces with practiced ease. "I'll give you white. Age before beauty and all that." He winked at his audience, drawing more chuckles. Simone studied the board. She'd been playing chess online under the username Queen Gambit 2003 for 6 years. Her rating placed her in the top 2% of players worldwide. She'd devoured every chess book the library owned, watched thousands of hours of matches, solved puzzles until her eyes burned. But none of these people knew that. To them, she was just the help. Someone to laugh at, to feel superior to use for entertainment. "Whenever you're ready," Trevor said, leaning back in his chair. Simone moved her pawn to e4. The game had begun. Would you keep scrolling if you saw your daughter being mocked by a billionaire? Drop a comment below with what you'd do in Diane's position, and subscribe to see how this chess match changes everything.